Tale About Love Number 1, The Most Beautiful Flower, by João Lucas Dieter. Sophie spoke slowly about anything at that moment, and John listened, knowing he couldn't miss a single detail. John had long desired a chance with Sophie, but she seemed to want everything except a deeper relationship with him. However, Sophie had one common passion. She loved flowers, and it was springtime. To the north of their village there was a mountain, and at its base lay flowers, so many and so beautiful that even the world's greatest florist would be impressed by their diversity and beauty. Sophie rambled on about anything, but John's attention to her was so intense that it bored her. She engaged in the most superficial topics, almost as if mocking the listener, knowing he would always be listening attentively. John made an effort to show service. With every bit of nonsense uttered, he showed more interest, either by stroking his chin, nodding, or using brief words to encourage Sophie's mocking discourse. He interspersed these words with carefully crafted compliments. Though they had no effect on Sophie, he caught her attention with a word from one of his sentences, flower. Bored, she had a cowardly idea.
If I am the most beautiful flower,
Yes, you are.
prove it. Bring me a camellia from the spring.
But they are very rare.
Wouldn't the most beautiful flower deserve a rare flower?
Yes, I never disagreed. But the chances of finding one are extremely rare, like 1 in 1,000. In fact, they're even worse. I think it's like 1 in 10,000.
Well, there would be no greater gesture than this to prove your affection for me, and in return, I would give you my full attention.
I understand.
John saw Sophie as a muse, unattainable yet constant in his mind. Although the challenge was absurd, he saw an opportunity there. He remembered what his grandfather used to say, "A lightning never strikes the same place twice."
I'll go get it.
Reaching the foot of the mountain took several hours, even by bicycle. Sophie knew that finding the flower was almost impossible, and reaching the mountain by bike was extremely exhausting. She had proposed the challenge just to tease him. On his blue bicycle, determined yet pensive, he pedalled. After so long, his neighbour had given him a glimmer of hope, even after so many refusals. Now his luck had changed. Hours passed until they reached their destination. Luckily, he loved riding and even more the sounds of nature. At this distance from the village, there were a few houses in this area. It was a quiet place, even more so than John's village. He parked his vehicle under a tree and saw a vast expanse of flowers. He lost some of the excitement he had carried there. Nevertheless, due to the determination he had, he began to search for the camellia from spring in the wild gardens at the foot of the mountain. He searched for a few minutes, until that fraction of time turned into an hour. He almost gave up when the sound of an analog camera caught his attention. A thin girl with a slender face and curly blonde hair was holding it. John stared at her and asked,
What's the reason for taking a picture of me?
I take pictures of God's beautiful creations.
Am I a beautiful thing?
Yes, every creation of God is a beautiful thing.
And what's your name?
Margaret.
I'm John.
And what are you doing here, John?
I'm looking for the most beautiful flower.
Are you referring to the camellia from spring?
Yes,
It's almost impossible to find.
I know.
But they say you only find it when you truly fall in love. When love knocks on the door.
That's the case.
Are you in love?
Yes.
How can you be sure?
She makes my heart flutter.
Diving deep into the lake nearby makes me feel the same way. But that doesn't mean I'm in love with it.
They both laughed. John and Margaret spent an hour searching for the flower, during which she asked why John admired Sophie. Margaret was very curious about the flirting conventions that involved future couples, which intrigued John because he couldn't answer the investigator. The term he used when trying to elaborate an answer was beautiful. That answer intrigued John more than Margaret herself. Beauty was so common, how could that be the only thing that endeared him to Sophie? During the time spent with Margaret, he realized that she treated him much better than the girl who he had promised the flower. How could the newly known girl treat him better than a girl who had known him for so long and knew of his precious affection for her? And if beauty were the definitive term of value, the analog camera girl was in no way inferior to Sophie. It was when Margaret let out a scream. She had found the camellia from spring while John was questioning his love for Sophie. He stopped doubting and thought that this event was a confirmation from God. He hugged Margaret and ran to his village. He found Sophie and showed her the camellia. She couldn't believe it and reached out to the flower, when John took it away and said,
This one in my hand is indeed very beautiful. But there is a flower in that region so beautiful that not all camellias could surpass it.
So why don't you get it?
John returned and handed the flower to Margaret, who indeed was very beautiful, but had reasons that made John's heart beat much stronger than a dive into a lake. He gave the flower to her because also, as his grandfather said, lightning never strikes the same place twice.